It was a Tuesday afternoon when I first noticed the change. I had come home early from work, hoping to surprise Rachel with a spontaneous dinner. Our marriage had been in a bit of a rut recently. She'd been distracted, distant. I thought maybe a simple evening would help us reconnect. I remember walking through the door, the smell of her perfume lingering faintly in the air. The house was quieter than usual, which was strange considering Rachel's typical energy. She usually greeted me with a warm smile, a kiss, and a couple of playful words. But not that day. She was in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she leaned over the counter, tapping away on her phone. I could see the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes, her brow furrowed as if reading something intensely. I called her name, but she didn't respond at first. She just glanced over her shoulder, gave a half-hearted smile, and muttered a distracted hey. I tried to shake off the unsettling feeling that crept over me. Maybe it was just a phase. The past few months had been tense between us, long hours at work, a few arguments here and there. But we'd been through worse, right? I convinced myself that this was nothing more than a minor lull in our otherwise happy marriage. After all, we had been together for nearly 8 years. I trusted her. But as I moved around the kitchen, setting up dinner, something about her behavior lingered in the back of my mind. Her phone. She never put it down. That wasn't like her. And when she finally did set it down, she quickly face-planted it face down on the counter. I couldn't help but wonder why she'd go to such lengths to hide it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself I was being paranoid, overthinking it. But that gnawing feeling wouldn't go away. I pushed it to the back of my mind as we ate together, talking about our day, but it was clear she wasn't fully present. Her mind was elsewhere, her thoughts tangled up in something, or someone, beyond our dinner table. That night, I stayed up late, lying awake in bed beside her. The quiet hum of the house seemed louder than usual. I turned over and watched her sleep, the soft rise and fall of her chest barely perceptible in the dim light. She looked peaceful, as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had. And that feeling would grow stronger with each passing day. The next few days felt like a blur. It was as if the distance between Rachel and me grew with each passing minute, even when we were in the same room. It wasn't just her preoccupation with her phone, though that was a big part of it. It was the little things, how she would zone out during our conversations, or how she started to come home later than usual. At first, I thought maybe it was work or some project she was involved in. But there was always this feeling, this nagging sense that I was losing her, and I couldn't quite figure out why. One evening, I decided to follow her. It wasn't something I was proud of. I knew it was a violation of trust, but something inside me couldn't ignore the growing unease. She said she was meeting a friend for coffee, but her voice lacked conviction. I watched as she slipped out of the house, her heels clicking against the sidewalk, and something in my gut told me that this wasn't just a friendly coffee meetup. I followed her from a distance. Not too close, but enough to see her head into a small, trendy cafe on the corner of our street. The kind of place we used to frequent when we first started dating. I paused across the street, leaning against the brick wall of a shop, watching. Minutes later, a man walked into the cafe. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but he seemed familiar. It wasn't until they sat at a corner table that I recognized him. Michael. Michael was the hairdresser who had been cutting Rachel's hair for the last year or so. A nice guy, I thought. Friendly. He was in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, and had a carefree energy about him. I never thought anything of it when she'd mentioned him before. He was just a part of her routine. But now, seeing them together in that cozy little cafe, something didn't feel right. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't want to acknowledge. Was I just overreacting? It could have been a coincidence, right? A friendly chat over coffee? But then I watched as Michael leaned in, his hand lightly brushing hers across the table. The gesture, casual and familiar, made my stomach churn. I couldn't bring myself to watch any longer. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned and walked away, my mind spinning with questions. Was this what I had feared? Was she seeing him outside of her hair appointments? That night, when Rachel came home, everything felt different. She was more guarded than usual, avoiding eye contact and seeming distant in every way. I couldn't bring myself to confront her. Not yet. I needed to gather more information. But that feeling, the one that told me something was off, had grown too strong to ignore. And the next day, when I found a small, unfamiliar key in the pocket of her jacket, that feeling turned into something else entirely. I stared at the small key in my hand, turning it over, trying to figure out its purpose. It didn't belong to any of our locks. I checked the front door, the back door, even the garage. Nothing matched. I couldn't understand why Rachel would have it. The key felt too deliberate, too out of place. Could it be a key to Michael's apartment? The thought was a stretch, but the more I considered it, the more it made sense. Her recent behavior, the secrecy, the distance between us, it all pointed in that direction. I was tempted to confront her right then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear of the truth I didn't want to face. What if I was right? What if this key meant that my wife, the woman I had trusted for years, was seeing someone else? I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the answer, so I kept quiet. I spent the next few days observing her, taking mental notes. She began staying late at work, coming home distant, her phone glued to her hand. There was a new air of secrecy about her, a guardedness that was impossible to ignore. I had to know. I couldn't keep living like this, unsure and suspicious. I began searching her email, something I had never done before. When I found the thread between her and Michael, I almost froze. The email was innocuous at first, just small talk about meeting up, but then I saw it. Michael wrote, "Can't wait to see you again. Maybe this time we can make it last a little longer, huh?" Rachel's reply made my blood run cold. "I'll make sure of it." My heart sank. There was no denying it now. Rachel was having an affair. The key, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, it all made sense. I closed the laptop, my mind spinning. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed more time to think, to plan. But one thing was clear now. Rachel wasn't the woman I thought she was. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each more unsettling than the last. The evidence was clear. Rachel was having an affair. But confronting her now, with what little I knew, seemed like a mistake. I needed more. I needed to understand the full extent of it, to gather the pieces that would expose the truth. I spent the next week carefully watching her every move. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know when she was meeting him, how often, and where. I needed to see it for myself before I took any action. One evening, she left the house in a hurry. The way she glanced at her phone before slipping it into her purse, the slight hesitation in her step, it all felt like a calculated move, like she was trying not to draw attention. I told myself this would be the moment. I followed her. I wasn't proud of it, but my legs moved before I could stop myself. I stayed far enough behind to keep out of her line of sight, but close enough to watch her every move. She walked down the street, turned a corner, and disappeared into a small parking lot behind a strip of stores. I waited, my heart pounding. Then, as if on cue, Michael appeared. I saw him clearly this time. His scruffy beard, the loose button-down shirt he often wore when he cut her hair. They stood there, talking casually, too close, too comfortable with one another. My stomach churned as they exchanged a few words, laughter in their voices. And then, before I could even process what I was seeing, Michael leaned in. He kissed her. A quick, passionate kiss. I felt a sickening jolt in my chest, like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Rachel kissed him back. I turned away quickly, my body numb. The sound of my own breathing seemed deafening as I walked away, my heart racing with the weight of the betrayal. It wasn't just emotional, it was physical. She was not only cheating on me, but she was doing so openly, without a shred of guilt. I didn't know what to do next. I had the proof I needed, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her with it. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of Rachel and Michael kissing kept playing in my mind on a loop. Each time it hit, I felt the sting again, deeper than before. It was the final confirmation of what I had been avoiding, the reality of what had been happening right under my nose. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, demand an explanation. But what would that accomplish? She would lie, deny it, and twist everything around to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I wasn't ready for that. I needed a plan, something more calculated than a knee-jerk confrontation. The next few days were torture. I went through the motions, pretending like nothing was wrong, acting like I hadn't just witnessed the unraveling of our marriage. Rachel, though, was a little more distant than usual. She seemed to be avoiding me even more, as if she knew I knew, but couldn't bring herself to face me. I wanted to shout, to confront her, but I kept it together. I spent more time on her phone, digging deeper. I knew I was crossing a line, but at this point, I didn't care. If she could betray me, I could at least uncover the full truth. I found more messages between her and Michael, arrangements for late-night meetings, playful banter, flirtations that made my skin crawl. One message stood out to me, though. It was a photo. Rachel had sent Michael a picture of herself, a seductive, intimate shot. She was lying on the couch, her hair messy, her eyes soft with desire. And the caption, "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again." I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as I stared at the image on the screen. This wasn't just a fling. This was something much deeper, more personal. She wasn't just seeking affection from Michael. She was giving herself to him in ways I couldn't even begin to process. I shut the phone and tossed it aside, my mind swirling with rage, betrayal, and confusion. How long had this been going on? How much of our life together had been a lie? That night, she came home later than usual, just like all the other times. She smiled weakly at me when she walked through the door, and I forced a smile back. But inside, I was drowning. I knew I had to confront her. But the question remained, how? What would I say when I finally looked her in the eye and asked the one question that had been haunting me? The night dragged on in an agonizing silence. Rachel and I barely spoke, the weight of what I knew hanging between us like a thick fog. She kept glancing at me, then quickly looking away, as though she was expecting me to say something. The tension was suffocating, and my mind raced, trying to come up with the right moment to confront her. I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could do this to me, but I held back. I knew that any outburst would give her the perfect opportunity to deflect, to turn the situation around, and make me the bad guy. It had happened before, and I wasn't about to let it happen again. The next morning, I woke up early, unable to shake the feeling of impending confrontation. Rachel was still asleep, her breathing steady and calm. It made me sick. How could she sleep so peacefully after everything? I went into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee, trying to steady my nerves. The sunlight streamed through the windows, but it felt dim, muted, like the light was struggling to break through the clouds. I stood there, staring out the window, wondering how it had come to this. I thought about all the times I'd been a good husband. I thought about the late nights I'd stayed up working, the sacrifices I'd made for her, for us. And yet, here she was, giving herself to another man. I felt like I had been living in a lie, like everything we had built was nothing more than a facade. When Rachel finally woke up, she came into the kitchen, her face unreadable. She poured herself a cup of coffee, but she didn't sit down. She just stood there, her back to me, stirring the liquid absent-mindedly. I could feel the moment approaching, the moment when everything would change. I had to do it. I had to confront her, no more running away from it. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, she turned to me. "I know you're upset," she said quietly, her voice soft but trembling. "I can feel it." I froze. Was she admitting it? Was this the moment she was going to come clean? I wanted to scream, "Who is he?" But I held it in. The words stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked the only question I could muster. "Rachel, what's going on?" Rachel's eyes flickered for a moment, and then she looked down at her coffee cup. Her fingers tightened around the handle, knuckles pale. It was the first time I had seen her this vulnerable in weeks. My heart twisted, torn between anger and sympathy. But I couldn't let it stop me. I had to know the truth. I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. But I could see the cracks in her calm exterior. She was on the edge, and I knew she could feel the weight of what I had discovered. I pressed on. "Don't lie to me, Rachel. I know about Michael. I know everything." Her face went pale. I watched as her mouth opened and closed, trying to find the words. But there was nothing left to say. She took a step back, as if physically distancing herself from me, then set her coffee down on the counter with a soft clink. Her voice broke, but she quickly swallowed the emotion. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. It just what?" I interrupted, unable to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Just what, Rachel? Tell me what happened. How long has this been going on?" She took a deep breath, her gaze shifting from me to the floor. It was the first time I had ever seen her so small, so broken. But I didn't feel pity. Not yet. I needed answers. "It started a few months ago," she confessed quietly. "I wasn't happy. Things between us changed, and I didn't know how to fix it." She hesitated, her eyes flickering to me briefly before looking away. I started seeing him for haircuts, and, I don't know, one thing led to another. Her words were like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let myself show the full extent of the pain. I had already known the truth, but hearing it from her lips felt like an avalanche. "You think this is just about a haircut?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You think I won't see through that?" She winced, her eyes brimming with guilt, but she said nothing. "And you've been sneaking around behind my back?" I continued, the words coming faster now. "You've been lying to me, hiding everything from me while you kiss him, while you sleep with him. How long, Rachel? How long have you been lying?" She closed her eyes, as if trying to block me out. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. But it was too late for that. I didn't know what hurt more, the affair itself, or the fact that she had tried to make me believe that everything was fine. The dishonesty, the betrayal, it all crushed me. "So this is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is how it ends." She looked at me, her eyes clouded with regret, but it was too late. There was no going back. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Rachel stood there, her hands clenched in front of her, eyes darting around like she was searching for something, anything, to fix this. But there was nothing left to fix. Not anymore. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the weight of everything crashing down like a heavy fog. This wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the life I had worked so hard for. And yet, here I was, standing face to face with the person who had shattered it all in a matter of months. "I don't know what you want from me, Daniel," Rachel finally said, her voice small, almost desperate. "I never meant to hurt you. Things got out of hand. I was lost. I was trying to find something." I laughed bitterly, the sound coming out harsh, foreign to my own ears. "Find something?" I repeated, incredulous. "Find something? You think this, him, was going to fix whatever was broken between us?" Her face crumpled as if she hadn't expected that response, and I saw the first real hint of tears in her eyes. I had always thought Rachel was strong, too strong to fall apart in front of anyone. But now, here she was, unraveling before me, her facade crumbling. Still, it didn't matter. She'd already broken the trust between us beyond repair. "I didn't know how to talk to you," she whispered, taking a step closer, her hand trembling as she reached for mine. "I thought I could fix things with him. But it's not what I want. It was never about him. It was about me." I jerked my hand away, the touch feeling foreign, almost painful. "No, you don't get to do this, Rachel. You don't get to drag me through this, make me feel like I'm the one who failed, when you're the one who betrayed me." She flinched as if I had struck her, but there was no room for sympathy in my heart anymore. No more apologies would undo what she had done. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "Please don't leave. I'll do anything. I'll make this right. Just tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix it." I shook my head slowly, feeling a sick knot form in my stomach. I had once believed that love could overcome anything. But standing here now, listening to her plead, I realized that there was nothing left between us. Not love, not trust, not even a foundation to stand on. "You've already made your choice," I said, my voice steady now, though the hurt was raw. "You just didn't think the consequences would be this real." She opened her mouth to speak again, but I couldn't bear to hear any more of her excuses. I grabbed my jacket from the chair and turned toward the door. "I'm done," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "This marriage is done." As I stepped out into the cool air, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. But the emptiness that followed only deepened the ache in my chest. It was over, and there was no coming back. The first few days after I left felt like I was in a haze. I didn't go back to the house. I didn't want to see her face again, not right now, at least. The pain of it all was too fresh, and I needed space to breathe, to think. I stayed at a friend's apartment, spending my days moving aimlessly, trying to fill the void with anything: work, old movies, late-night walks. Nothing helped. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face, her eyes pleading for me to stay, for me to forgive her. But I couldn't. Not this time. I had been betrayed by the one person I thought would never hurt me. I thought about everything, the happy moments, the years we'd spent building our life together, and how it had all been a lie. How everything I had trusted had been shredded and torn apart by the woman I loved. The worst part? I still loved her. I hated myself for it. I hated the way I still wanted her, despite what she'd done. But I couldn't help it. I had given so much of myself to her. We had built a life, and now it was all gone. For nothing. I knew I had to get my head straight, so I did what I thought would help. I took time off work and moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far enough away to escape the memories that clung to every corner of the house we had shared. I wanted a fresh start, even though I knew that would take time. But even in my solitude, there was a nagging question I couldn't shake. How could she do this? Why Michael? I started thinking about him, about their relationship. I had seen him before, at a few of the haircuts, always polite and friendly. I had never once suspected him. He seemed like just another guy in Rachel's life, no different than her coworkers or her friends. But now, I couldn't help but wonder how deep their connection ran. Was I just a placeholder for him? Did he mean more to her than she ever let on? As the days dragged on, the weight of my thoughts began to consume me. I couldn't get rid of the images of them together. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the fact that she had shared something so intimate with someone else. And for that, I wasn't sure I could ever forgive her. But there was still so much left unsaid. I had to know more. I had to find out how far this had really gone. And so, I made a decision. I would find out exactly how deep the affair ran. I knew I had to get answers, even if it meant reopening wounds I wasn't ready to deal with. The thought of sitting down with Rachel, of looking her in the eye again, made me sick. But I had to know how far things had gone between her and Michael. I needed to understand the full picture before I made any more decisions. I began by reaching out to some of her friends. It felt like betrayal in itself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. I tried to act casual, asking them about Rachel, trying to get a sense of what she had been like over the past few months. None of them suspected anything. They all described her as being, well, herself, cheerful, energetic, a little distant at times, but nothing too strange. It wasn't until I spoke to her best friend, Sarah, that I felt a shift. Rachel's been different lately, Sarah admitted, her voice hesitant. I didn't want to say anything, but she seemed more preoccupied, like she had something on her mind, but wasn't talking about it. I thought maybe it was work, but now that you mention it, I'm not so sure. I didn't want to push her too much, so I didn't mention Michael's name. But hearing that Rachel had been acting distant even with her closest friends made something click in my mind. She hadn't been this withdrawn just from me. It wasn't just me she had shut out. It was everyone. The pieces were falling into place. Michael hadn't just been a convenient escape from our issues. He had been a refuge. A place for Rachel to seek comfort when she no longer felt safe with me. And maybe, just maybe, that comfort had turned into something more, something deeper. A part of me wanted to call Rachel right then, to confront her and demand the whole truth. But another part of me held back. I wasn't ready to face her directly again, not until I knew everything. So I did what anyone in my position would do. I found out where Michael lived. I didn't know why, but the idea of seeing him, of confronting him about the role he had played in all of this, felt like the next step. I wanted to understand him, even if it meant forcing myself into a situation I didn't want to be in. That weekend, I drove to his apartment complex. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, staring at the entrance. It felt ridiculous, like a scene from a bad movie. But something inside me, something raw and desperate, urged me forward. I needed closure. Finally, I got out of the car. I stood at the entrance, looking at the building in front of me, and then rang his buzzer. The moment the buzzer sounded, my heart jumped into my throat. I stood there, stupidly, frozen for a few seconds before I managed to hit the buzzer again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I knew what I had to do, but the air felt thick, suffocating, like it was holding me back, keeping me from moving. Then, finally, the intercom crackled to life. Yeah, a deep voice, familiar, but unsettling. It was Michael. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice colder than I had intended. There was a pause on the other side, the kind of silence that stretches on forever before someone responds. "About what?" Michael asked, the casualness in his voice almost mocking me. He had no idea what I was about to lay at his feet. I took a deep breath, pushing all the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, to the surface. "About Rachel, and what's been going on between the two of you." Another pause. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. Finally, he responded, "I'm not sure what you think you know, but I'm not going to get involved in whatever this is." I clenched my fists, the frustration bubbling up inside me. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take what's mine? You think I don't see what's been happening?" The words hit harder than I expected. Michael didn't respond at first, and for a moment, I wondered if he would just hang up on me. Instead, he let out a long, frustrated sigh. "Look, I don't know what you're thinking, man," he said, "but it wasn't like that. Rachel and it wasn't planned. It just happened." It took everything in me not to scream, to hang up, and just walk away. But I didn't. I needed him to hear me. "So you just happened to fall in love with her? Or was it just about sex? Was she just another conquest to you?" There was silence on the other end for a long time. It was as if he didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower now, more defensive. "I didn't plan it. It wasn't supposed to be this way. But Rachel's been going through something. I don't know what it is between the two of you, but I couldn't just stand by while she was hurting. She needed someone." His words stung like daggers, but I held my ground. "She needed someone, huh? And you were just there to help her through it? Is that all it was?" I didn't give him a chance to answer. I turned on my heel and walked away from the intercom, my mind reeling. I didn't need to hear any more. I already knew the answer. She had turned to him because she was looking for something I couldn't give her anymore. I was left standing outside, feeling more lost than ever. I didn't know what I expected from that conversation. Maybe some kind of admission from Michael, or a crack in his confident demeanor. But I didn't get any of that. Instead, I was left with nothing but the sinking feeling of defeat and the crushing realization that Rachel had found someone to fill the space I had once occupied. As I walked away from the apartment complex, I found myself pacing aimlessly around the block. My hands were shaking, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. I had confronted him, and I had gotten answers, but they weren't the ones I wanted. They weren't the answers that could bring me peace, or closure, or even the smallest semblance of relief. All I could think about was Rachel's face, how she had begged me to stay, how she had tried to make me believe it was all a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It had been real, and now I had to figure out what to do with the mess she had made. I found myself standing in front of a small park. The cool evening air did little to calm the fire inside me, and I sat down on one of the benches, staring at the ground. I was so tired of feeling like this, so tired of being the one left behind. But no matter how hard I tried to push the feelings away, they kept coming back. The truth had set in. Rachel had betrayed me, but more than that, she had chosen him. She had chosen someone who could give her what I couldn't. And I hated myself for feeling so damn weak about it. I spent hours there, just sitting, wrestling with the thoughts in my head. I kept replaying everything. Rachel's distant behavior, Michael's confident tone, her unreadable expression when I confronted her. What had I missed? How had it come to this? By the time I walked back to my car, the weight of everything felt heavier. The answers I had gotten had only opened up more questions, and I wasn't sure I could face Rachel again. I didn't know what I would say, how I would even begin to process it all, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. The truth had been laid out in front of me, and now I had to make a choice: walk away completely or fight for a relationship that had already been shattered. The thought of leaving her behind, of walking away for good, seemed impossible. Yet, it also seemed inevitable. The next few days blurred together. I tried to keep myself busy: work, cleaning up the apartment, anything to avoid thinking about Rachel, about everything that had changed between us. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape it. The memories kept flooding back, each one heavier than the last. The dinners we used to have, the way she'd laugh at my jokes, the quiet moments we shared on the couch. Those moments were gone now, vanished. I could feel myself starting to unravel. Every time I saw a couple laughing together, holding hands, I was reminded of what I no longer had. Every time someone asked about Rachel or our relationship, it felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I wasn't fine. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself standing in front of our old house, staring at the windows. It felt wrong, like an invasion of something private, but I couldn't help myself. The lights were off, and for a brief moment, it felt like she was still inside, waiting for me to come home. The idea of her in there, living her life without me, sent a wave of nausea through me. I hated how much I missed her. I hated how much I still wanted her, even after everything. It didn't make sense. I had every right to be angry, to walk away, to leave her behind and never look back. But I couldn't. I didn't know how to turn off my feelings. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at it for a long time, wondering if I should call her. Ask her one final time what had gone wrong. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I knew what she'd say. She'd apologize. She'd cry. She'd tell me how much she regretted it, how sorry she was. but I also knew it wouldn't change anything. It couldn't. I stood there for what felt like hours, the quiet of the night pressing in on me, before I turned and walked away. It was clear that I couldn't go back. I couldn't continue living in this limbo, constantly torturing myself with the thought of a life we could never have again. But even as I made my way back to my apartment, the reality of leaving Rachel behind settled deep in my chest. Could I really do it? Could I really walk away from the person I thought I would spend the rest of my life with? The days felt like they were dragging on, each one heavier than the last. It was clear I was avoiding Rachel, avoiding the inevitable conversation. But every time I thought about calling her, about facing the truth head-on, I hesitated. What could I possibly say to her? How could I put all my pain into words when I still didn't fully understand it myself? I began throwing myself into work. It was easier to stay busy, to focus on something, anything, other than the mess I had left behind. But no matter how many meetings I had, how many deadlines I pushed myself to meet, my mind always wandered back to her. It was like an invisible thread pulling me back, making it impossible to forget. I thought about confronting her again, sitting down, laying everything out, and seeing if there was any way forward. Maybe we could work through it. But each time I imagined the conversation, I felt sick to my stomach. Would she just apologize again? Would she say the right things, the things I wanted to hear, just to make it go away? I wasn't sure I could trust her anymore. The trust had been shattered beyond repair, and I was afraid that confronting her again would only make it worse. So, I kept my distance. I didn't call her. I didn't respond to her messages. I let her chase me, let her try to fix something that was too broken to be fixed. But deep down, I knew I was only hurting myself by staying silent. It wasn't until I received a message from Rachel's best friend, Sarah, that I knew I couldn't keep running anymore. The text was simple, but it hit me like a freight train. Rachel asked me to reach out to you. She's been trying to contact you, and I know she's hurting. She really wants to talk. Please, don't shut her out completely. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to see Rachel's name in writing again, to feel the weight of her absence in my life. But the words echoed in my mind, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the tiniest flicker of something. Hope, maybe. Or was it just the fear of letting go? I put the phone down and paced around my apartment, my thoughts a jumbled mess. I knew what I had to do, even if I didn't want to face it. I had to make a decision. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, about what I needed to move forward. I took a deep breath, grabbing my phone again, and started typing. I'm ready to talk. And then I pressed send. When I pressed send, an unexpected calm washed over me, as if the decision to reach out had lifted a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. The wait for her reply was agonizing, and my mind raced through 1,000 scenarios. What would she say? Would she even want to talk to me after everything? A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Thank you for reaching out. Can we meet somewhere? I really need to see you. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I hope you'll hear me out. I stared at her words, rereading them over and over. There was sincerity in her message, but I couldn't ignore the doubts in my head. How could I trust her again after everything that had happened? Was this just another apology, another plea for me to forgive her? I agreed to meet her, though I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Closure? Answers? Or was I just clinging to something that had already slipped away? We met at a small cafe, the kind we used to visit when things were simpler. When Rachel walked in, she looked different, tired, almost broken. The woman sitting across from me was not the same person I had once known so well. She seemed lost, and there was a sadness in her eyes that made my heart ache, even through the anger and betrayal. I don't know where to begin, Rachel said, her voice shaky. I've thought about this moment 1,000 times, but I still don't have the right words. I let the silence hang for a moment before speaking. I don't know if there's anything you can say that will make me forget what you did. She flinched, and I saw the regret in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Daniel. What I did was unforgivable. I thought I could escape what was wrong with us, but I was wrong. I searched her face, looking for something, anything, that would make me believe her. But all I felt was a deep emptiness. I don't know what to do with any of this. I don't know if I can move forward. Rachel's voice cracked. I understand. If you never want to see me again, I'll accept it. But if there's any chance we could rebuild, I'll do whatever it takes. I stared at her, my heart torn between love and everything else. I don't know, I said softly. but maybe we can try, for both our sakes. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't have the answers. But maybe, just maybe, we could still find a way forward together.